Neha.
Antonio.
For those who don't know, we've been roommates on and off for about a year. And when we met, we were both going through a divorce. What have you learned about yourself since then?
Well, first of all, I've learned that I can meet many amazing people, even though I'm also losing many people that I thought were very important to me. Um, so life is just a circle in that sense. I think the fact that we met at that phase in our life, it was truly a gift for me in finding community, finding connection again, and honestly being able to just own and speak my truth, which I'm not sure I didn't. It's not like I didn't do that before the divorce. I think at some point, being married for as long as I had been and as long as you had been, we kind of just fall into this slow momentum where I think we just accepted things for as they were rather than reaching forward. So I think that was the other gift, if you will, of that life transition is the opportunity, and also just I was required to move forward, right? So it was an opportunity, but it was also kind of like, what else do I do?
Well, yeah, I'm curious. I think you only had a month or two. You had just gotten back, right?
Yeah. So if I made the timeline of my relationship transition, and of course, I think you may also agree with this, at least for, you and I, the divorce didn't happen overnight. I think there were a series of changes that happened in our lives and sort of our quest for personal growth and in our sort of understanding our needs and being able to verbalize those needs. So I would say maybe some of those layers had built up over time, but funnily enough, it all started at the beginning of the year for me, around the end of January, middle of February. And my then spouse and I decided to just pursue a separation. And I think that's also legally required in Texas. So that's what our then couples therapist recommended. And she recommended 3 months of a physical separation where the idea was no contact. And I lived in Dallas at that time. And my ex, he grew up, he was born here in the US and he has family there. So fortunately, he had family he could turn to. I don't have family in the US. My entire family is in India. And what I decided to do in that moment was actually go live in Mexico City for two
Same.
months.
Yep.
And I wish I could explain why Mexico City and how that even came to me. Honestly, just came to me on a walk with my dog. I was walking my dog that morning and I was just thinking about, oh gosh, I need to find a place where I can live separately from my spouse. And, he'd been very kind about letting me stay in our then house, but I felt like it was disrupting his life and I still cared about him enough to where I was like, he needs to also have some semblance of normalcy. So I considered going back to India, but I had just started a company. The time difference would have just made life really hard for me. Plus, I love my parents very much, but it can also be very suffocating sometimes when people love you that much, especially your parents who just want you to be okay. And also, they just, in this moment that's so anxiety producing for them, they obviously have a lot of feedback and advice, but they also have no idea what you're going through. So I think I just needed to be by myself because I also had really good friends all over the country, who were like, come stay with us. It's okay. We would love to have you. Your nieces and nephews would love to have you. And I think I realized in that moment, as grateful as I was, again, thinking about the gifts, right? As grateful as I was to know that there were places for me to go, I just knew I had to do this on my own. And Mexico City and I have had a very interesting relationship. Like that city has always called to me for years. And then I finally got to visit back in, I want to say 2016. And I loved it. And I remember telling my spouse, I was like, oh, one day I'm going to retire here. Like, I'm just going to move to Mexico City. I'm going to live here. And it just makes sense in my head. And he thought I was crazy because, first of all, we had the most touristy experience of Mexico City. We were living in the district that only had hotels. And he was like, you're seeing vacation Mexico City. You don't know what it's like here. And he was true. having now lived in Mexico. Also, I was only there for 2 months, right? But went to Mexico City for 2 months, processed the separation, processed sort of who I was becoming in that moment. Lived alone, learned a new language. I took Spanish lessons, which was honestly also magical how that all transpired because I showed up in Mexico City without a plan, just a place to live, knew nobody. And then in the first 2 hours I was there, I had contacts for Spanish lessons. I had made new friends. So I had dinner that night with somebody I just met. It was kind of magical how this forces of the universe were just like, hey, it's okay. You're going to be fine. So yeah, you and I met when I had just returned from Mexico City and I was in the process of shifting my life from Dallas back to Austin and also coming to terms with the fact that the marriage was over. I mean, I'd literally just thrown away big canvas pictures of my ex and I, like our engagement pictures, our wedding pictures. I just thrown them in the trash as in the process of moving out of our, shared home in Dallas into the home that you and I get to share now.
Wow. There's a lot there. I mean, I love what you said about how the universe has your back.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. And it's been about like 2 years since that time total, right?
Yeah.
Who's Neha now? Like, how has it been transitioning from such a different life? And how has it been rediscovering yourself?
I think about that every day, Antonio, because the reality is, I think the Neha I am right now in this moment is probably not the Neha I'm going to be tomorrow at this exact same time tomorrow. And I don't think I'm also the Neha I was yesterday. And I think that has been something that I think about every day because one, I think I wake up every morning with new energy and just sort of a sense of, what are we going to do today? What adventure awaits?
Oh, love that.
Yeah, and I love that for myself too, to be honest.
And I'll tell you, being her roommate, I thought I went out a lot and lived this life and adventure, but this girl doesn't sleep.
I do sleep. I get my 6 hours of sleep at least.
I'm a 8-9 hours kind of guy, but she
That would be nice.
has the most packed social calendar. So she really does have that zest for life and that new adventure every morning. So tell me more about that.
I would say it's one word, community. So the social calendar, right? Let's think about the social aspect. It really is about my seeking opportunities to learn something new, meet someone new, or support my friends who are doing something new, and I think that's also been really remarkable about my move back to Austin, because to be completely honest, when I moved back to Austin, I quite honestly had prepared myself to also move out of Austin and move out of Texas. And I think this goes back to like who was Neha before and who is Neha now. I think there was a part of me in the marriage and also like immediately after the divorce that was still blaming other people for what was happening in my life. I mean, not all the time, right? Because I always had a sense of like accountability and independence. And I was like, I make my own destiny. I choose the experience that happened to me. But I think I always had this narrative in my head that I only live in Austin and I only live in Texas because of my ex, which that's a fact. I moved here for my ex. Facts. And I think many of us have that experience where we move for somebody else, or we say we move for a job, right? We always like, oh, like this wasn't my choice. I moved here because this happened. But the truth is all of these were my choices. Like I chose to move to Texas with my then husband because I loved him and because I really believed like this is where my life is going to be. Now, did I always feel happy, living in Texas because of the huge culture shock I got moving from, the coasts. I lived in the DC and San Francisco before moving to Texas. And I always tell people moving to Texas from San Francisco and DC was a bigger cultural shock for me than moving from India, where I finished high school, to Boston,
Really?
which
DC
is
to San Francisco?
DC and San Francisco to Texas was the bigger cultural shock. Like Texas is like its whole thing, and I
Really?
freaking love it. And now I love it. I'm like, heck yeah,
Yeah.
let's go Texas. But I always blamed life circumstances for what happened to me, and I think a big shift was now I'm like, oh well, this is my choice. I'm choosing to take, for example, I, you know, was applying for jobs, and the corporate job that I ended up taking, they were like, you got to be in Texas. And that was my choice to do that, right? That was my choice to say, nope, I'm going to pack up and leave Austin. I'm going to pack up and leave Texas. And then similarly, every day I wake up and I make a choice to attend either, you know, a friend's event or like attend a friend's party or go to a social event where I might learn something new. Like recently I attended a teach-in about affordable housing, and that was a choice, right? I could have done multiple things, but I chose to spend my time doing that. And I think that attitude has really been a shift from, I think, who I was before the divorce, or who I was honestly maybe for like parts of my marriage. At some point, I think I was like, oh, this is happening to me, or I'm doing this because this person expects me to do that. And I think that shift has been the most profound, which is why I think now I'm so excited because I'm like, ooh, what's on the docket? What are we going to do today?
Totally agree and relate with that. It's very subtle at the beginning of a new relationship to just be so excited to be with them that you start abandoning yourself. You start thinking about us instead of just
Yeah.
me. And totally fine, you know, you're building a relationship, but over time, that becomes the comfort zone of just us. Because there's probably many factors for it. Codependency, your significant other can totally be an excuse for playing small and for
Yeah.
not being proactive and not paving your own adventure. So when I get into a future partnership, I'm going to really keep that intact because I think that's what will keep the zest for a relationship spicy for many years is if
Yeah.
you maintain your own identity as well as build the new one. Would you say that's true for relationships?
Yeah, I think that's true for relationships. And I think I'm going to add another layer to that, Antonia, because as you know, I'm from South Asia, I'm Indian. And, you know, my family's Indian. My ex, his family, I mean, he's first generation American of Indian descent. And I think there's a cultural expectation layer that adds on to us making ourselves smaller or like suppressing what we believe is right for us, right? And I think there's another aspect that I feel like is nuanced because you know me, and for people who don't know me, I've always believed that life is abundant, right? Like I think scarcity is not a real thing. And I'm going to have to caveat this because we live in a world where we see famine, we see destruction, we see like just horribly, horribly unacceptable levels of like inequality and inequities. And I don't think that's because we don't have enough. I think it's because that's like a factor of greed. That's a factor of like just really, truly selfish behavior and the individualistic personality. So for me, one of my personal values is to never be so individualistic that I don't think about my role in contributing whatever it is I contribute to the greater society, right? So, and it's such an interesting dynamic because the other extreme is where people make themselves small to the point where you're not even contributing positively to the community anymore, right? So, I think that was another dynamic that I had to work through both during the course. I mean, honestly, my whole life, right? Like that's just been the dynamic of my whole life. What should I major in college? Ooh. So, for example, I wanted to major in physics and philosophy as an undergraduate major. And my poor father was like, what are you doing? Why are you going to college for this random major that won't get you a single job? And it made sense for him, right? And I felt obligated to make my father happy. So I'm like, fine, I'll major in politics and I'll major in computer science, right? So I chose safe majors to make him happy, even though in retrospect, I wish I just explained myself, right? And actually, to be fair, the explanation I would have given would have not made him happy either. So my theory for doing physics and philosophy is I think both physics and philosophy are an exploration of our natural world and also like our spiritual world, if you think about it. And I'm like, God, wouldn't it be so exciting? Because when I major in that, I will solve all the answers of why we do what we do and all the answers of the universe. And I think I did tell my father that, and his head was like, what is going on?
That is amazing. I had no idea that about you, and I love it too. There's another way to say those two things is spirit science,
Oh,
because there is.
that could be a major.
Yeah, it's without going too far on a tangent, it's about the quantum realm, or it's just about, like, we really don't actually know how deep that rabbit hole goes of consciousness,
And
spirituality,
the universe and atoms
and physics.
creation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they do say, like, if subatomic particles, and then there's the string theory, it's just vibrating at a certain frequency, and that's similar to what everybody says in spirituality is like, my vibes, like, get your vibration higher. And people do feel vibes, and we are transmitters and receivers of vibration. And so I think there's a lot of overlap there. So it's amazing that that was a young pursuit of yours.
That was, and it was shut down. and that's what I
Damn
mean.
it, Dad.
No, I think he meant well. And honestly, I mean, the amount of love that my parents have for me, I think that's also magic in its own way. So, I mean, I'm like, damn it. And also what's ironic is because in today's age of AI, where safe jobs are now being automated, someone, I would argue, with like a physics and philosophy, double major, I would see them as being very valuable, where critical thinking skills are going to be more important. Like just curiosity and the ability to research and do discovery and like really ask important questions. That's going to be arguably more valuable. And I think that is a good thing, because for too long, people have been putting college, university education in this box where you only go to college to get a job. And now everything that people were told about this is what you need to do to get a job is being challenged, and it's blowing up in everyone's faces, right? And I think for me, and I always joke about this, I mean, I always loved learning. I thought going to college was such a gift, and like taking courses is such a gift. And obviously, like, formal education has its own challenges because, again, greed and just sort of how the systems are built towards serving maybe not the community, but more like serving certain interests, certain capitalist interests. So I think that's where maybe formal education is rightfully getting having to go through some disruption of its own. But yeah, I think learning and curiosity, that should always be valued, right? And this goes into the spirit of what we were discussing about how do you not limit yourself, and how do you not put yourself in a box and then fight against your own desire to get out of that box.
I love what you were saying about that too. Being too individualistic, you're forgetting about your community, you're forgetting about your neighbors. And living with you has really taught me that, I think you're such a good advocate and leader because you feel the pain. Your empathy is really high. I was wondering, I'm like, there's just so much going on. It can be overwhelming. Definitely is overwhelming, especially if you're an empath, especially if you feel deeply. And I think myself, many others who are just working for their own bills and survival are pretty numb to that. And maybe that's kind of by design, that they want you to feel numb. They want you to feel like you can't do anything. They want you to feel like you're just supposed to take care of yourself. And as I continue to grow myself, I want to be a leader of my community. I want to help people who are less fortunate, because if you think too globally, that can help, but where we really will make the most impact is locally. And it starts with how you take care of, it really just starts with making your own bed, cleaning your own room, cleaning your own house, making sure you're fit to lead, and discussing with your coworkers, your neighbors, your family, like being able, I feel like most people that have a hard time with this have a hard time because they get too defensive right away. They don't have the adequate enough skill level to empathetically listen, challenge their own beliefs, and be curious to find out what the other person is thinking and where they're coming from. and being able to understand, I guess I would think like you if I also had those kind of parents and upbringing. But if you're open, this is an idea that maybe a third idea that we can come up with together and find agreement. And I think that's going to be the kind of conversations to have to really make a difference.
Yeah. And I think you hit on something, right? Because you're talking about how we're forced to feel numb, right? But then also we're forced to be afraid of the consequences of speaking up for others or for ourselves, right? And I think the combination of that leads to a paralysis almost. So one of my unpopular opinions that I have shared before, I don't know if I've shared this publicly, but I was pretty disappointed in some of our elected leaders, some of our state legislators. And of course, I have not personally talked to them about this, but when we had the gerrymandering conversation for the Texas legislative map, which we're going to create new constituencies around like racial lines. And I mean, I don't want to get into the whole backstory of it, but it was basically illegal. And and sadly, because this country is split into like Republicans and Democrats, and it's like just constant like battle between them, which I think is also just so unhealthy and ineffective for, I think, our democracy as a whole to have this sort of like two extreme ends. But what I think I remember being disappointed about was that the Texas Democrats left the state so they couldn't be in session to vote on this new map that was very clearly gerrymandered. And, they asked for money from all of us being like, oh, like they're going to be fined. And if they, don't show up, like I think, I don't know if it was the governor or other like political leaders, from the Republican Party, or like if they don't come back, they're going to go to prison. And I know it sounds crazy, but I'm like, they should go to prison. And you know what? That will be a badge of honor. That will be a badge of honor for an elected leader or like a community leader standing up for what is right and standing up for like defending the community and defending our rights, our constitutional rights, our dignity. And ultimately what happened is they all came back after collecting money from all of us. And that bill passed, like that map passed. And that map is now what we're all going to be voting against. Like those were new districts and new, constituencies created as a result of that map. And I kept thinking about, the stories I've read about not just the Indian freedom fighters, because, India is a relatively young country. We only became independent from British colonization in 1947, which was also very bloody history in South Asian history. But India is a relatively new country. And so the stories I remember reading and listening to, and even the movies I watched and the songs I listened to, were all celebrating these people, these freedom fighters, we call them, or these revolutionaries who stood up for the injustice, stood up for unfair laws, and they went to prison, that was one of the non-violent ways that they participated. There were also violent ways that I personally cannot condone, but that was part of the struggle for what the Indian independence story is. But I'm just thinking about, like with everything that we're seeing happen in our country right now, with the extreme sort of unaccountability of some of our elected leaders who are wasting our public dollars every day without even considering the impact on average people who now have more expensive groceries, who don't even have security of jobs because there's just like the job losses are pretty legit because of just the state of the economy and the uncertainty. And I'm like, they should be protesting. They should be out there speaking up every day. And if, they're law enforcement sent to arrest them for causing disruption or whatever, yeah, go to jail. Wear that as a badge of honor because that is their job. Like I can't go get arrested, as like a civilian, as like a normal regular individual, because that is more risky for me. Yet, however, there are multiple people out there who have like protesters against the genocide or protesters against ICE brutalities. They're the ones going to prison. Why are elected leaders who have so much privilege, have so much protection, and are literally the public eye? And guess what? If they went to prison speaking up for our community rights, you know what? We'd be voting for them again. We would definitely bring them back to office because they're doing the job that people like you and I, or like community organizers who literally like also have families and also have to take care of their well-being. And, you know, once you're in prison, that's on your record. So obviously you're not going to get a job at like, you know, McDonald's or like even our grocery store. But the political leaders who are already there, they're already out in public. Like, do what Gandhi did, do what Nelson Mandela did. Like, I don't understand what is happening these days. And I think that comes back to what we were saying. That, and I don't think the political, I mean, I think they're all brave in their own ways. And like I said, like I don't know what it's like to walk a day in their shoes. I'll be very clear. But having said that, I'm not seeing the displays of bravery that I know is possible from them. And it is very disappointing. It's very disappointing to me.
Wow. Love the passion. And I agree with you. Like, it fires me up. The people have the power.
We do have the power. And we're having to take this in our own hands, which is also disappointing leadership, right? Like, the leadership is not coming from our elected leaders, which I think is also, like, they need to think about what this means for democracy when you can't think about your elected leader as someone who's going to take the bullet for you, so to speak, right? And I'm not literally, I mean, I don't want to condone that again, but like not literally, but someone who's not going to put themselves on the line. But instead it's like everyday people like taking time off from their work, taking time off from their family, protesting, you know, and doing the work that honestly our elected leaders should be on the front lines doing and speaking up and promoting. But I don't know. It's such a weird dynamic. And no wonder most people would choose to be numb, choose not to say anything, because the consequences, they're too much. I mean, they got to be there for their families. They got to like, you know, like pay their bills. I mean, I can't, like if I get arrested tomorrow for, you know, attending a political rally or speaking up, even like, you know, if like I saw someone getting arrested and I speak up and then ICE comes and arrests me, like, I mean, I think there's two things. One, I'm like, oh shit, my life will be like, my life will change. Like my life won't be over. I think a new chapter of my life will open up. But the risk and the consequences for me, I would argue, are like so much more risky than I would argue like a political leader who already has the protections. Like they have like people who will like speak up for them. Like we'll go rally to get them out, right? Like I'm just thinking about like what I recall from reading about just truly like heroic moments in our history and heroic moments that we actually see every day, even in other occupied territories that are facing that thing where they literally have nothing to lose.
Wow. Well, I think education.
Yeah.
Also people's cultural upbringings determine how active someone's going to be. And if you're personally affected by something.
Yeah, yeah.
But for everybody who's kind of just like myself, nothing's really affecting my family or myself. It's kind of hard to see the consequences of what's happening. But the more I get educated, the more I'm around activists like yourself. Even my ex had multiple classes of activism and philosophy, and how multi-generational this struggle has been, that the fact that systematically, institutionally, oppression has been the norm. And having accountability is a good first step, because there needs to be consequences. And speaking out, and you just look at anything that has to do with Epstein and how lack of accountability there is with that, shows that the governing elite can do whatever they want. And part of raising a strong population, strong community, is having these conversations, educating ourselves, knowing who to vote for, how to vote, running, and then doing what you can, like without having the title. Like I love seeing people around Austin who are picking up trash.
Yeah. Volunteer, like taking care of each other. Yeah.
What are some things that you would see, like if you were mayor of the city, what have you learned for policy or what's right? Like what would you change? Like if you were the queen of the city,
Oh my
and you
God.
had absolute rule and authority,
Well,
what
first,
would you do?
well, this is literally being recorded after the No Kings rally days, so I don't think we need kings
That's
and
true.
queens. We need, um, folks who truly believe in the ideals of democracy and make those ideals come alive by how they show up and also how they inspire others. And I think there are a couple like really. So this is also interesting, right? Because as mayor, as any elected official, right? And we can get into conversation about what being a mayor in Austin means versus being a mayor in like other cities like New York City or even Houston that have strong mayor programs because we're like our mayor here is not the final decision maker, right? Like he's like we've got an elected city council who take on like the legislative actions, and then we have a city manager who is not elected. It's someone appointed by the city council, and the city manager is who makes the budget for Austin, and then the city council approves it, right? So I think if we had a strong mayor system, we would see that flip where we would elect sort of the person who determines where our taxpayer money goes or where our what direction our city finances go into. But in the spirit of the question you're asking, right? I think one is folks just having that civic education and having better access to that. I think just given the reality of how our society is and our economy is, I mean, businesses are a big part of our society because, and I don't just mean big businesses, but also like small businesses, right? I think like you think about like, read any books or any sort of like movies where they talk about like a happy community. It's like everyone, like the ice cream shop is owned by someone who's your neighbor, and then the florist and the grocery store, like everyone just knows each other and we're all participating in service of our community. So like a decision to raise the prices of eggs, it won't be something that's coming from corporate who doesn't give a shit about like people in the community. They're like, oh, wait, I need to raise the price of eggs, but what's going on? And then the community comes in together and solves this problem together for each other. So I think there's dynamics that we can get by supporting small businesses, by supporting entrepreneurs in the community. And to that end, I would say private-public partnerships would honestly, from what I would love to experiment with, right? The magic wand that I would wave is how can we build public-private partnerships in a way that every additional dollar that entrepreneurs, businesses are able to benefit from being part of a community also goes back into reinvesting in the community, right? So right now, obviously, that's what taxes are used for, right? So I don't know if you know, but every time, oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher this part, but I believe our parking passes, oh, no. I think our sales tax goes to fund Cap Metro. I hope I'm not wrong about this. I'll have to double check. But the point is, our taxes, like, does everyone know? For example, I'm confused about this and I've been researching this, but do we know what is funding our parks? Do we know what's funding the roads that we get to drive on or the sidewalks in our neighborhoods, right? I don't. I mean, this comes to like so many other things in our life. Like, do we know where the potatoes we bought came from? Do we know? I know these flowers came from Colombia because, I also learned that Colombia is the biggest exporter of flowers. But I just, the fact that we don't connect the different cycles and we don't connect where things come from in our life, like, I think that's the kind of education I would also encourage. Again, everyone's their own person. I can't force anyone to do something they don't want to do. But I think truly when people realize that knowing the sources of things that bring us joy in our life come from, I mean, I think that just changes perspective because then when the moment that goes away or something changes or you want something improved, you know where to expend your energy. And it probably won't be expending your energy complaining. You'll expend your energy trying to find a solution. I think we expend our energy complaining when we just feel helpless, right? And this goes back to our previous conversation about why do people not want to get involved in politics, right? Because it doesn't personally affect them and they also just don't have the time, but also just they feel numb. But I think part of why being educated, being informed matters, because the more you're aware of what's causing a problem and what ways we can like maybe not have the problem disappear entirely, but when we can minimize the impact or the harm caused by that problem, I mean, that's empowering. And then and then you want to do more. And then you feel like things are in control, because I do believe, even though there is a sense of overall hopelessness in this world, like you said, like this seems like this has been the norm forever, right? But also things have changed. Like maybe things don't change overnight, but the needle has been pushed in terms of the rights we get to enjoy. You know, even the fact that you and I are sitting here, given our backgrounds, I mean, that probably would not have happened, I don't know, 50, 100 years ago. If you think about it, the fact that I have the right to vote. I mean, women didn't have the right to vote till like the 1960s, I think. Crazy.
Yeah, that is amazing to put in perspective. And thanks for teaching me those things. It does sound so important to know who's the business owners, like who are your neighbors, like what community are we invested into.
Yeah.
And there's been, of course, a benefit to outsource everything because you maybe get things cheaper, but the long-term cost has been an erosion of good long-term value that builds and compounds over time. I'm actually proud to be working for a family-owned dealership that has been in business for 105 years.
Wow.
I know.
Oh
And
my
now
gosh.
like their families, like 5 generations deep, are just embedded into the community. And that is pretty amazing.
And that's love. Like that's truly love for the business. You know, that reminds me, Antonio, when I was in Delhi last year, I did a little photo shoot. And by the way, these amazing photographers, I just told them my vision because I had a milestone birthday this year. And
Best party ever.
well, thanks to my amazing DJs, including you and Hector. So shout out to y'all. And also all my friends who truly, again, I felt like my birthday was also another celebration of community.
It was Neha Palooza.
So shout out to my friends who came up with that. I mean, I think for me, again, just given the times where my birthday was at the end of January, this is right after, you know, the very, very jarring murders of 2 white U.S. citizens by ICE agents, which, you know, was on top of other U.S. citizens that they had, you know, already murdered since the start of the year. And it just felt wrong to me with like the fear in the community and just with everything going on to have a birthday party. But I think, again, we're talking about like taking care of yourself first. And truly also, this is where I owe a big debt of gratitude to my friends who were like, no, you should do something. It is your milestone birthday. And then, you know, like multiple friends were like, oh, like we can contribute. Like one of my friends in the band, I asked them like, hey, would you like to play? And she was like, oh my God, yeah, we'd love to be there. And so we literally had a garage band. I asked one of my friends who's an expert on artificial intelligence, AI, if he could talk about like just the general sense of despair about AI and layoffs in the tech community and what this means for all our jobs, not just the tech community, right? Like all the jobs impacted by AI. So he talked about that and we had a good discussion. And then with my other friends, who is a local elected official in Travis County, I was like, hey, like people don't know what to do about ICE. Like they're like, how can they be prepared? Like, what are their rights? Like they're seeing things on social media. What's real? Like, how can they talk about it? And then we had a discussion about what's going on with ICE. Why are they in our communities? What should we do? And I think for me, that was really beautiful because as someone who is a new citizen, I've only been a citizen for about, oh gosh, like 7 years. I should know this, but it's pretty recent, right? Like, and I was a visa holder. I was an H-1B visa holder. It's a work permit and it's not like so there's 2 types of visa. It's like a non-immigrant visa is what that's called. And I was on that visa for a long time. And then I was a green card holder. And there were friends I have who were at my party who were like, they were just so afraid to talk about it. And they're so afraid about like what this means for their security, their families. And then that discussion, I think, from what they told me was cathartic for them because they could talk in a safe space. Like we made sure none of that was recorded for everyone's safety. But like, you know, just having that recognition that, you know what, these are scary times. And we're going to talk about it and we're going to like look at each other and acknowledge like this is a safe space. These are people we can turn to and look for answers. And then we had a great party. We had Indian food. You DJ'd. We had like a watercolor class. And then we had the music. And I think we needed that. We need this like collective community exhale which also comes from being aware, like knowing this is a reality. It sucks, but here's what I can do about it. And now I'm also going to have some fun because you know what? Life's too damn short to not have some fun.
When it comes to immigration or gun control, gun violence, or you name one of the hot topics for the government to just, my perspective is they'll cycle through one at a time some outrageous things to distract the public, to anger them, to like stir up the bee's nest. And ultimately, when it comes to immigration, I think whatever race you speak to the least, look at that, reflect on, okay, what is my in real life policy of the other? Because ultimately we fear what we don't know. And if you grew up isolated or just with one race, that is very limiting, and that kind of contributes to the conflict and the chaos. But I feel like if we really start to melt our own borders within our mind first and adopt a friendly attitude and curiosity to anybody that might be scary looking to you or scary to you or just different or whatever thoughts you have, I think that is fundamentally the very first place to start when it comes to immigration is who put the fear and lies in your head first?
Yeah.
And what would love tell you?
Well, I'm going to add another layer to that comment about like finding diverse communities and finding people from other races to hang out with. I think what's interesting about that, Antonio, is right. Sometimes race is also like a construct in some ways. So if you, a fun fact for, I don't know for you, maybe you know this already, but Irish were not considered white, like back in the early 1900s. Like they were immigrants, right? Coming from Ireland. And so Irish weren't considered white. So what is whiteness? Another fun fact. So, and I'm not entirely certain about the exact percentages about this, but many people are aware that Michigan has a very high Arab American population. Dearborn, Michigan, love that place. Like every time I'm there, it reminds me of my time in the Persian Gulf because I grew up in Doha and Dubai as well. And every time I'm there are these like couple sweet shops I go to. Okay, my mouth's watering thinking about it. The food, oh my God. Anyway, but the point is, all these folks are from Arab countries. And in fact, there's an amazing Arab American history museum also. And a lot of the folks I recall that they showcased as famous Arab Americans, a lot of people would have never guessed that they are Arab because they are white passing. And apparently, and I'll have to look this up, but apparently in the census collection, right, that collects like, hey, what ethnicity are you? Apparently for a while, a lot of Arab Americans in Michigan, because they've been there for so many generations, they would mark themselves off as white because they're not Asian. I mean, they don't think of themselves as Asian. They're Arab. So they were like, oh, white seems closest, right? So I think it's also very skewed in terms of what we're seeing, like what our eyes want us to believe in terms of diversity or like who is like us and who isn't like us, right? So I think that has been something that I've also had to remind myself of because as you know, I grew up in India. I finished middle and high school there. And one of my complaints had been, oh, India has no diversity, which I feel like any Indian person listening would be like, what are you talking about? And they're right. They are right to be outraged at me for that because India does have a lot of ethnic diversity within itself, right? Within the borders of the country. And I think this also gets into like the concept of like ethno-nationalism, right? Because Punjabis in India, like they could be their own country. Like they're, you know, like we have the state of Texas, there could be the state, and there was a state of Punjab. And then it was like, you know, thanks to the British, they like split that up. And now some of Punjab is in Pakistan, some of Punjab is in India. Bengalis, another really incredible community they were also split up that way. So when the partition happened in 1947, they split up, again, India and Pakistan at the time. And what is now modern day Bangladesh was called East Pakistan. And the idea was like, oh, our Muslim brothers and sisters need their own state based on religion. So we're gonna, like, the British were like, oh, and there were also leaders within the South Asian, independence movement. And there were legitimate problems, right? I'm not gonna say like, oh man, they were so stupid to do this, but there were general political tensions, kind of to the point of your question, where they're like, oh, the Muslim voice will never be heard if we don't have our own state, right? Like that was a legit concern, because there was, India is majority Hindu. Like anyone who like thinks that's not true is not paying attention. And so there was a predominance of Hindu leaders even during the freedom movement. And so a lot of Muslim leaders felt like they're not going to have, their rights protected or their culture and heritage protected. And so they were like, oh, we're going to India and Pakistan. And literally there's like Pakistan on the west, India, and then we've got, Bangladesh now, that was East Pakistan. And then eventually the Bangladeshi people, modern day Bangladesh, were like, yo, like our Pakistan, like our Pakistani counterparts are also undermining our Bangla heritage, being like, because they don't speak Urdu, which is what Punjabi Pakistanis speak. They speak Bangla. And so there was like also this, I don't want to say fight, right? But because it's not a fight, it's like the right to like be proud of your culture, be proud of your heritage, and to not have to hide or like minimize who you are and what your heritage is. And so coming back to what's happening in America, and I think this is something I'm very conscious of, because I know how I sound. Everyone's like, what? You grew up here? Like, I'm not, you didn't grow up in the US? You sound American. I'm like, dude, my accent, like I'm a chameleon when it comes to accents. Like throw me in London for a couple of weeks and I'll probably sound British then. Who knows, right? Like when I'm in India, I speak English a little differently. I think a nature of just being a third culture kid where I've grown up in so many places, I've just always had to be this cultural chameleon. But especially now at this stage of my life, I never want to forget where I've come from. I never want to forget my community. And I'm leaning in very heavily. One of my projects is around documenting more of my family's heritage, and we're Kumaoni from the Himalayas, like documenting our music, documenting our literature, documenting our language. Like I don't speak Bahari, which is the language that my parents tell me that we speak. But I don't speak it. Like I heard them speaking it with my grandparents, but I never spoke it. And I'm like, what am I doing? Right. But now I'm like thinking about the next generation of Kumaoni children growing up in the diaspora around the world, and growing up also in India, where they are also being displaced from our mountains. Similar to gentrification we're seeing not just in Austin and our city, in our neighborhood. Like it's the same story everywhere. People desire to what's the word? Like they desire for self-determination. They desire to be proud of their heritage and their history and their stories. And when that is suppressed because either they want to comply with the majority, or because, they're just trying to be practical with limited resources. And they're like, well, I'll again make myself small so that I can just get by and just think about survival. Like, I think I don't want to say it is problematic, but I think there are ways we can support each other again as a community by celebrating where we come from, and like realizing how that fabric, like stitching together our multi-diverse, multi-ethnic, multicultural fabric together, that is gorgeous. That's beautiful, right?
Oh, for sure. It is beautiful. Like, I think part of anybody's true awakening, some never lose it, but returning back to your roots.
Yeah.
What makes me unique? Oh, how did my parents grow up? How did their parents grow up? Like, that is the essence of culture, of grandmother, great grandmother.
Yeah.
How did they do it? How is the recipe?
Knowing where we come from.
Knowing where we come from is so important.
Yeah.
And you were talking about like being not, making yourself small, but one should never be oppressed for it, should never be excluded,
Yes.
should never be looked down upon. There are certain things, like if you're killing people, stealing, cheating, like there's certain universal things that are not allowed. And that's another conversation. But for myself, in my teens and 20s, growing up predominantly with white people, I wanted to be white.
Yeah.
So I was like disowning my culture.
In DC, I wanted to be white too. I did a lot of white passing things growing up too.
Yeah, and I think that's just because we want to belong more than
Yeah.
who am I.
Well, also I love wearing pearls actually. I'm wearing pearl earrings and it's like when my friends are like, "Who are you? Why are you so preppy?" But I love pearls and my grandma also wore pearls and I think that's also like legacy British fashion, but
There's great things of
there
every
are,
culture.
exactly.
But because depending on where you grow up and being in the United States, it's like if you're in America, you should be speaking American. And now I think we all need to be adaptable. I think you should learn English, but one should also know some other languages too. Like it it's about being adaptable and considerate, because it's a privilege to be able to have grown up in this country, and defending the ideals without being oppressive is the
Yeah.
key.
That is key. And I also I think my issue is also, it's not that immigrants are not learning English. They are learning, they just don't speak it the way certain other Americans want them to speak it, right? And even think about white Americans. I'm sorry, meet someone from New York versus California versus Montana. I mean, do you think they're speaking English the same way?
No,
I'm just gonna say, right? And I think this is where I really challenge some of these like ideas of superiority. And so I'm a Hindi language teacher. And also growing up, fun fact about me, I learned English before I learned Hindi. And that also stemmed from my parents' worry about my not being fluent in English because my father was mocked a little bit for how he spoke English. And I think that made him feel less. And so so I grew up in Doha and he sent me to a British nursery. And his pride and joy would be for his daughter to sound like an English child, which I mean, it's very sweet. Again, it came from love, but that was the dynamic that was playing out in his head. And, of course, I'm really glad for the education. It was, it was high quality, but there were a lot of racist implications. Like my parents were told by my very sweet British nursery school teacher to not speak with me in Hindi at home because she's like, oh, and this is still a theory that like is predominant. Like I literally heard someone say this to me recently with like, oh, raising children with multiple languages, especially toddlers or infants with multiple languages is going to like hamper their brain development. Now, first of all, every child is different. So obviously parents need to do what's right for their child. They need to observe things and every child learns things differently. Like some children are talking before they're walking, everyone's development pace is different, not just as children, but also as adults. So we all just need to give each other some grace. But that was just racist. That was just a racist sort of mentality of like, no, she should learn English first. So anyway, I didn't speak much English till, Hindi. I spoke English. I didn't speak Hindi till about a year and a half or so. And it started because we went to India to meet, my parents' family. And they all made fun of me. And then my parents felt bad that I was being made fun of for not knowing Hindi. And also because I was more of a target for not knowing Hindi when we were in Delhi, because there's like little child is like speaking very, very British English. They're like, oh shit, she's going to get kidnapped. So then they made me watch Bollywood. Then they started slowly introducing Hindi. But I was mocked for how I spoke Hindi. Actually, I'm still mocked for how I speak Hindi in certain communities, right? And I can tell when someone's doing that out of like just teasing me versus like truly judging me. And I think this is why I feel so connected to my students because I am a native Hindi speaker now. And I've been formally educated in Hindi where I can read and write Hindi and I have, not to brag, but a beautiful Hindi handwriting. I'm very proud of it because I worked really hard at it, right? But I really empathize and relate to my students and I have to remind them, you don't have to speak the language perfectly. Just keep talking in it, right? Like just keep saying the words, keep practicing. And the time you're spending with me is for me to kind of guide you and to just introduce you to new vocabulary, correct you on certain things. I mean, pronunciation sometimes, but really more grammar and understand the context of why words sound a certain way or why conjugation works a certain way. And also, as a student of Spanish, that's what I get out of my Spanish teacher as well. I mean, she's like, Neha, just talk to me in Spanish, right? Like she writes all her emails to me in Spanish. We send WhatsApp messages in Spanish. And it definitely, it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to me because I'm like, oh God, I'm going to get this wrong. I feel so ashamed. And I feel like that's the kind of shame I want to dispel for people. And I think that's also my problem when people mock immigrants who speak perfectly acceptable English, but just not in the accent that they want to hear it in. Or maybe they mess up like a pronoun or a gender here and there, right? Like, because it is confusing sometimes if it's not your native language or if you're just a recent speaker of English, right? Like, there's no need to make fun of people, especially people who are trying. And I think that's kind of what I find disappointing. And again, my spicy take. A lot of the people mocking language learners are the ones who honestly can't be bothered to try to learn a new language. So it's like, yeah.
You're jealous.
Yeah,
You're just
they
jealous.
just don't get it, right? Because they're like, oh, look at me, I speak proper Hindi or proper. I don't know why. They look at, I'm like such a proper speaker. No, they have plenty of typos in their email. They've definitely messed up, right? So let's all just chill out a little bit when it comes to language and just focus on what languages are for, which is to make connections with each other, which is to understand each other's lives, to like read books, express yourself. And like, it's so fun for me when I just randomly like burst into Spanish sometimes. And I'm like, why did my brain do that? I don't know, but I love it.
Yes, I do love
Me gusta
languages.
flores.
I love accents. I love languages. It's such a fun thing. I really enjoyed the stories you just told and really resonate with them. And now I'm curious because ultimately the common theme around the world of oppression, of shame, of challenge usually comes economically. And
Yeah.
I've heard comedians talk about whether you're an immigrant, poor from Latin America or white trash or whatever, like they all kind of are struggling to just get groceries. They're all struggling to just get education or to have energy to do anything beyond just survival. And luckily, I had a little contrast. I kind of grew up in a ranch, modest kind of style till I was 8. And then my mom found a pretty professional corporate
Yeah.
father figure for us for the next 8 years after that. And we grew up middle class, maybe like eat out a restaurant once a month. But we had a nice neighborhood and I never had to worry about like crime or violence or anything.
Yeah.
And
That's stability.
So
Yeah.
luckily I got that kind of upbringing because I'm curious for you, like economically, how did you grow up? Because that British private or nursery school sounds fancy. I met someone else who also went to a similar kind of upbringing in school and from India. And I'm just curious, you do very well. You're a boss babe, corporate lady, like doing well. Was there a contrast or have you always kind of thought abundantly? Were things ever scarce? And then how do you think that played into your development?
No, that's a good question. So I think the first part of your question is around how did I grow up? How was money handled at my home? And the second part that I would also love to talk about is how that sense of financial stability, how that feeds into how we might be able to express ourselves in all aspects of life, right? In terms of the choices we get to make. Because I do think a lot of my creative pursuits that I'm now like known for and that I am proud of, I think they came from being in a place of better financial and also like immigrant stability, right? Because, so let's talk about first how I grew up with money. So for better or worse, I think I never really understood money. I'm just gonna be very honest there. And it's not because I grew up with a lot of money, but I think my two things happened, two defining moments. One is, my father, he worked in software at big multinational companies in the Persian Gulf and then later in India. And he worked really hard. And I think my mom and dad were very good about budgeting. And I don't think I fully appreciated this till I was an adult. And actually, my ex husband is the one who brought this to my attention. My parents were so good at this and managing their budget that apparently, when they were my age, I want to say when they were in their like late 30s or early 40s, they were they kind of were like at zero savings, not because they were bad with money, but there was a big rift in my father's family, where my father, who'd been working abroad and working these very well-paying jobs for years, and he was sending money back home to his father and investing in his family property, so to speak. There was a huge rift in the family where I would say the story from what I understand and what the story that I'm telling, right? That's my perspective. My father was unfairly targeted by his own sibling, where she basically, I would say, stole everything from him. Like all his financial nest egg that he was building, his investments in the house, which he imagined he would live in, and we'd all grow together in this multi-family home. No, he was basically estranged from his family. And so my parents, that's where they sent all their money, right? So what I understood is that my parents had to start from scratch in their late 30s. And I remember we moved around a lot at that time. And I was very busy with school, with getting good grades, with stupid crushes and friendships. So I missed a lot of this. Maybe part of it was also deliberately I missed a lot of it because, you can sense when things are off, but I wasn't really paying attention. I think this was me being like, la, 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 I don't know what's going on. But I could sense in terms of budget things, or if I'd say, can I buy this, right? My parents would ask me questions about why do you need this? Think about it. Well, we'll come back to it again in 2 weeks if you still want this. But my parents always let me buy books. But of course, they made sure I read the books. They're like, wait, did you read the book? And then my father would quiz me. We'd open a random page. He's like, hey, this is happening on this page. Can you tell me the background? And then, yeah, really ran a tight ship. So they never said no to books. They always made sure that my academics were valued. But the other big incident, right, was when I was maybe 10, my great granduncle, whom I was very close to growing up, and he's honestly, I think, a very foundational figure in my life and how I set my values. He's former Army. He was a Army general. Oh my God, very high rank in the Army. And he was retired, and so every time I'd visit the Nainital, the Himalayan town where my family's from, we'd just go for a stroll, through the markets, and I'd be like, oh, I want this candy. I have a sweet tooth. Always had a sweet tooth. I was like, oh, I want this candy. And at some point I asked for the fifth candy at the fifth store we went through. And then I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to take all your money. I'm sorry, Nana. I called him Barde Nana. Barde Nana, sorry. I hope you have enough money for this. And I'm sorry if I'm using up all your money. He's like, Neha, money comes and goes. But happiness is forever. So whatever you want, we'll buy it. I'm like, okay, I want this. I mean, of course, 10-year-old Neha was a little bit of a brat, clearly. But I always think about that. The money comes and goes. And I think that's also been very true of what I have seen about money in life. And I think even my parents, like I said, they really prioritized my stability. They made God knows how many sacrifices that I probably don't even know about to make sure that my sister and I were very comfortable. The fact that I had the privilege to study abroad in the US. I mean, I did get scholarships and I worked 2 jobs on campus and all those things, right? I did that too, but it's still very expensive for someone who earns in Indian rupees to send their daughter, one of 2 daughters, to study abroad, right? So my parents were very savvy with their money. And I think I saw that. And I think 2 things happened. One, I realized I am not thinking about money that way. And I think maybe one of the things that attracted me to my ex was the fact that he was savvy about money that way and he understood concepts. but then secondly, I think my recognizing that also made me realize I need to do better, right? So I now have this better practice about like, I wouldn't say I budget as much as I am aware of where my money is going. I think every time I like set up budget things using apps, they're like, oh, now you're $100 over your social spending and you have exceeded your restaurant budget by like 200. And I'm like, oh, crap. But I know where the money is going. So when it's time for me to pull back, or for example, when I published my children's book, I was considering getting like a cosmetic surgery done that entire year. So like I wrote my children's book in 2019. And the start of the year, I'm like, I'm going to get like cosmetic surgery done, right? Because I was like, I just wanted to look good. And by the time July came around, when I got the idea to write my children's book, Meet Buckley, and I realized what that investment was going to cost, because I did some research on like, you know, what it would cost me to get an illustrator and the time and all of that. I was like, oh, I guess my cosmetic surgery money is going to go into publishing this book. And that's what happened. So I'm able to like reallocate and reprioritize my budget based on what I think is important. So at this phase in my life, right, like I'm very grateful that I have a job that's providing me financial stability, that one pays like my required bills, but then also I look at the buffer I have to invest in creative projects like the poetry podcast I want to do, or travel, or whatever it is, right? But then the way I do it is like, okay, what needs to go away to make these other aspirations happen? Or where can I get extra income to make those aspirations happen? So for example, my Hindi teaching gig, that pays for some of my creative projects, right? So like, I think that's how I've thought about money, as sort of like a tool and a resource. But I never think I'm going to just sit on mountains and mountains of like money and like just not do anything, because I think life is for living. And as my great grandpa, as Bardi Nana said, like money comes and goes, like happiness is forever.
What a good memory.
Yeah.
What a good legacy he gets.
Yeah.
I know. I remember you talked about him and how important he was to you.
Yeah. No, I was very lucky to grow up with someone like him, and just how dignified he always was and how fun loving. And I think, yeah, I think one of the hard things about being an immigrant and deciding to move here for college is I missed a lot of years, you know, with him once I was older, where I wish I'd asked him more questions, right? Like Bad Bunny says I should have taken more photos. I wish I'd asked more questions, you know? And I think that's been an inspiration for me for the projects that I've invested time in doing. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you for the question. I think people get very awkward about money.
Yeah, I went on a date with this one girl, and she was like, "Are you a spender or are you a saver?" And it just sounded like so traditional, of like, maybe that's what a parent would say. There's spenders out there and then there's savers out there. But obviously it's not as simple as
Yeah,
like
I'm just
that.
thinking how I would react to that question.
But money, religion, sex, politics, all the best topics, because those are the taboo kinds of things that people don't either talk about because they are too close to their ideas. They don't have curiosity.
Also, you're afraid of being judged.
Afraid of being judged.
I think it's the judgment more than anything else. I think so.
I like asking people how much they make.
Yeah.
I usually, if depending on like how close I am to them, I said, if you don't mind me asking, I'll just do that. And then they'll be like, okay, I don't mind.
And I think there should be more conversations like that, because we need more transparency around what everyone's making. And I think that's a big part of the women's equal pay movement, right? Having more transparency on what people are making. Like, you should know how much everyone on your team is making. And I think employers should be able to justify that, right? Like me as a manager, like I had to be very honest when I was hiring interns and when I was hiring part-time staff for my startup. I would be very honest about, like, this is what I can afford. Here's where money is going. In fact, my interns had access to my QuickBooks as well. So they saw literally where the money was going, which I think is also important for interns or anyone who's working at a startup or any small business to know how the money is flowing. One, because a lot of people take these jobs because they maybe want to start their own business one day, and you got to know the realities of what actually costs a lot of money versus what doesn't. And secondly, I would say it also shows transparency. Like the same way companies, like the publicly traded companies disclose their finances. I think we need more of that. We need more of that in this world.
Totally agree with transparency. And then it's also very revealing because I briefly read Psychology of Money, and it just was mainly talking about a person who was under earning and stressed and gotten into debt approaches money differently than someone who has been comfortable and stable.
Yeah.
Like your risk tolerance goes towards
100%.
money. Your giving philosophy, your lifestyle.
Yeah.
A little thing on lifestyle, Jim Rohn, an old philosopher, I guess, motivational speaker, would talk about the art of lifestyle is like if there's two numbers that pop in your head when you're about to give a tip, go with the higher number.
Heck yeah.
To be the higher thinking person.
I agree.
And Person Smiles has a really great abundance like book on money, and people who squeeze every penny, people who like really like have it painful to buy things, like, oh no, this bill or this debt or this car or this clothes, like, oh, or like people who like rattle the cage for a really good deal, or like really like get into a fight almost for negotiation, don't really have as much of a good experience as paying a little more for the ease of use, or for the stress-free, or for the first class service, or paying a little more for the nicer stay, or just the art of lifestyle is about maximum joy, happiness, abundance, and prosperity versus I gotta hoard and hold on to everything because none of it's all gonna leave me, and I'm never gonna, like, one is in a state of fear and one is in a state of joy when they're spending money. And that's what he would teach is when you were paying that bill, when you're buying that thing, you're just giving love and like, I'm excitedly giving this money. I'm excited to be paying for this. And so there's like a huge, people can come from totally different worlds when it comes to money.
Well, I agree, but I think one place where I would defer on the people who are reluctant to dish out more, I don't think it's just about the abundance mindset, because I think there are times when you can be overindulgent and it's like, whoa, why are you really doing this?
And then it goes to waste.
Yeah. And I think what I at least practice for myself is expressing clarity. So just a very recent example. So this year, I mean, I traveled to like 7 or 8 countries last year.
That was cool.
It was cool. But, I did it because I had a certain purpose from each of those trips. Like I wasn't doing that just because I wanted to check the box and say, oh, I traveled, right? And in fact, I had this vision to visit Australia and New Zealand at the end of last year during my break. And instead I hiked the Camino de Santiago in Spain instead.
Inspiring.
Which was inspiring. But, that was a last minute decision. And I think clarity is so important because I had budgeted my trip to Australia, New Zealand. I had this whole itinerary. I'd actually even booked hotels, all refundable, by the way. I always pay extra to book refundable because insurance doesn't always work. But also, like, I'd rather pay $100 more for a refundable because then I can get my cash back. But the thing is, I sat down and one, I imagined myself on that trip through Australia, New Zealand. And secondly, I questioned why I was going. And one of the reasons I was going to Australia was because I wanted to scuba dive and see the Great Barrier Reef, but I failed my scuba certification. So that was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that. So then I was visualizing just snorkeling. And just snorkeling is also incredible. Like, it would have been a true gift. But then I also just realized the schedule I'd built for myself, because I only really had 4 weeks, was so jam-packed that I was going to be so exhausted. I think maybe it's less than 4 weeks. I think it was maybe 3-ish weeks. And I had to sit back and be like, I'm not doing this for the right reasons. Like, I kind of was going because I wanted to check off, like, having visited, I think 6 continents before my milestone birthday. And I think that was what was driving me. I was like, oh, I've been to North America. I've been to Asia. Like, I literally was like, all these places I've been to, and now I want to check off Australia. But if you're going to do things for a checklist, like that's not happiness. That's not the pursuit of happiness. Like checklists are not happiness. So I had to sit back and get clarity about why I'm not doing this. And then I was like, I'm not going. And I had no plan. And I was like, what is going on? I have this time off from work that I'm so lucky to get. And I have like budget to do something. And the Australia, New Zealand would have been like a splurge, right? And I think that's why I had to be like, whoa, like, are you going to get the satisfaction you want from it? And then I was dropping a friend off to the airport. She was going on her second Camino. And she was telling me her itinerary. And she was like, first of all, it's so inspiring. It is a very inspiring and arduous challenge to do. Like you need to be a certain level of mental and physical fitness to do it. But she was also telling me about how there are all these Michelin star restaurants along the route that were pretty affordable for like compared to other Michelin star restaurants. Like everything's relative. And she was like, yeah, for like you get us 8-course meal plus wine pairing for like about $100, which if that's the kind of thing you like, that is a freaking steal. All things relative. Like that's still a lot of money to spend on a meal. But that is a steal for like Michelin star, which also you can argue, what does Michelin star mean? Like it's a marketing ploy, but whatever. These are incredible meals. And that inspired me. I was like, I'm going to do this. And I like did like some research, like talked to some friends who've done it. I bought a new pair of hiking boots. I'd never gone hiking before, by the way. I don't even own a backpack. Even now, I took my regular backpack to go backpacking for like, 8 days where I was like living out of a backpack. But all that to say, like, I think the clarity was most important for me in terms of what I wanted to do with my time and money. But secondly, another hot take, people who don't have clarity on money typically also don't have clarity in other things in life. I just think it all kind of feeds into each other, right? Like I have been told by some people that I make decisions really fast. And that's because I generally like look at a situation. And one, I think there's a gut feeling of like, yes, I want to do this, or no, I don't want to do this. But then secondly, I also then know what to do to take action, right? Whereas in my experience, people who are indecisive, they're either at odds with what their gut wants to do and what they think people want them to say instead, or what people expect them to do. And that's where the indecision comes from. So for me, I honestly think every time you're indecisive, that is also a choice. That is a decision. And that is also like maybe a time for you to gut check, like what is going on? Like, why can't you accept the truth that your soul, your conscience is directing you to? Which is why, honestly, I think most times in our life, like we know what we want to do. We're just afraid to admit it.
Bars. That was really good.
I don't know if I'm right. I haven't done research on this.
I like it. Yes, it's true. It's true. When you know yourself, you're clear, you're aligned, you make decisions quickly.
Yeah, and it's so great.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, if you know you can't make the decision, you're like, okay, what is stopping me? And then you can go tackle what is stopping you, and then you can go do what you want to do.
The rare times where I'm very indecisive and just a mess is when I failed to plan my food and I did not eat at certain times. And then when I'm hungry, I just don't feel like anything and war it with myself.
Like not being grounded, not feeling sure.
It's rare when that happens.
Like one of the things that I'm grappling with right now, as we've talked about, is like I'm considering running for Austin City Council. And I think there's two aspects for it. One, I'm pretty sure I want to do it, right? But the hesitation from announcing it at this point where we are right now, like I haven't announced it formally yet, but here's what's going through my mind, and I'm sharing this because I think this is helpful for anybody who's making a decision like this. I know my whys. I know why I'm doing it. I feel prepared to do it. I'm ready to face the consequences of taking on such an audacious role, both as a campaign, but also, when and if I get elected. But I think what's holding me back from announcing it is I need to get some things in my life in order, because running a campaign is expensive. I need to figure out fundraising. I need to ask people for money, both people in my network and also people like voters. I need to go talk to voters. I need to actually take actions. I need to figure out, like, do I have a buffer, like a financial buffer, if this means I have to take time off from my full-time job to campaign? Like, can I afford to go without like 2 or 3 months of pay? Another fear I have is, what if my job is like, no, you can't do this and I have to quit? And am I ready to not have income come in and then say I don't win this time? Am I ready to face that consequence? So financially, right? Like that is a big thing, but I'm recognizing that. Like I know why I'm pausing to just go full in. And it's not because I don't want to do it. It's because I'm like, wait, I haven't sorted this out. And part of me is also like, we'll figure it out. But there's sometimes you have to be practical. Like, do I have buffer, right? Because we all should have buffer in case we lose our job or like the flow of money stops coming in. But like, what protections do we have? And I think those are serious, thinking about our conversation about money as well. Like, those are serious conversations I need to have with myself or with people who can give me financial advice. And then I need to figure that out so I can go do my next thing, because I know what's stopping me. And it's not fear of what other people are going to think or whether I'm ready for it or not. Like, I know I'm ready. I know I have a good message. I know I have a good purpose as to what's driving me to even like consider running for this. But now I think there's some practical behind the scene things I need to work out, which is the reality of every candidate. Because I'm single. Like I'm not taking money from my parents. Like I need to take care of my own bills, and I don't have I have to take care of myself before I can go out in the community and say, hey, community, trust me to take care of you.
Well, I'm proud of you. So much intention, so much preparation. It's sounds like you got a plan.
I think we all have a version of a plan. We just need to figure out which one we need to go with.
And this is a good seed for the germination of the story of you and what you're going to be going into.
I think so. Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Antonio. This was very fun.
It was.
I think, it's funny. We live together, but we don't always we have deep conversations. I think that's how we've also bonded as people. But I think something about this setting, you make it very comfortable to have these conversations and to share stories and open up about realities. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this was amazing. I got to know you even deeper. And yeah, it's just something about the camera or the microphones or something. It just gives that extra energy to tell the full story, to go into detail. Because that's where the riches are.
I think so.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.